Well, you got your bucket list, your grocery list, your list of things to do. You got a list of all your wishes, that's a wish list, dude. You got your Amazon and Santa Claus and Tooth Fairy too. But I know a list that don't exist, and buddy, so do you. It's the Epstein List, it's a mystery list with a twist. It's a myth of a list that we all just missed. Be an optimist, not a pessimist. If you wish to persist, it's probably best you forget that list. Now what were we talking about? I don't remember, but I can sleep a lot better at night. Yeah, life can just go along, knowing there's 10,000 hours of sunshine and flowers and nobody doing a damn thing wrong. Hear no, see no, damn Bongino, Cash Patel. Well, I wouldn't want to be a sweating man with bulging eyes. Now tell me them fellas ain't compromised. Any implicated dude will tell you anybody on the big list knows just how far the folks in charge will go to keep the status quo. So when the war bell rings, the song that they'll sing is a song that we well know. I-oh, so it's off to war I go. Well, they said they's gonna fix it, but now they're all complicit. They owe. So it's off to war we go. Send the poor off to war, what else are we for? They owe.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you guys are all having a great day. I'm still having my crazy pop-ups. Hopefully that will stop. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Hopefully you guys have had a great couple of days. I haven't been here. I've been working on a project. I'm sure you guys, if you're local, you've probably, good morning, Linda, heard of this movie. It's called Soul on Fire. I can't really talk a lot about the type of security work we do because we sign a lot of different confidentiality agreements to not disclose information. So I can only tell so much, but we were doing security for the talent for the film Soul on Fire, here locally in the St. Louis area. It was a great privilege to be providing security for these wonderful people. So when the movie comes out, hopefully you guys all run out and see it. A lot of those scenes, of course, filmed right here in St. Louis. A lot of people in the St. Louis area, of course, as extras in that film as well, along with some big names, of course. And good morning, Dottie, and good morning, Oneless. Lots of things to talk about today. I don't even know where to start. I really don't even know where to start. Yesterday morning, when I woke up, I was so upset about everything that's going on. So upset. I'm like, if I had a show, I would just be probably raging mad and you guys would never want to listen to me again. So it was kind of good that I was busy, with some security things. But then this morning I wake up and I'm actually madder than I was yesterday because there's more information today than there was yesterday. And I want to start out by saying, and I'll probably say this a few times through the show to make people, make sure people understand loud and clear. There's more good than bad. There is far more good than bad. There's a lot of issues that are important to all of us, important to me for sure, that are not going the way I wanted them to go, not going the way any of us wanted them to go, but there's still more good than bad. And tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about that because I'm going to be doing a little poll on social media today after the show. And I want everyone, if at all possible, to go on. I'll put it on Facebook, I'll put it on X. I want to know what are the maybe top 5 issues going into the election and that gave you reason to vote for Donald Trump? What were the policies that you really, really wanted, the most important aspects to you? And what were those? And for me, we're in the right place with most of what I consider my objectives. But there's things I'm upset about too. Good morning, Rob. And we're certainly going to talk about all of that stuff. Dottie, good morning to you. Now, Dottie, had a long night, as she stated. She is in North Carolina. I will not reveal her whereabouts, but she is in an area that is experiencing flash flooding. We're going to talk about flash flooding today because it's happening all across the country. A lot of people thinking, what is going on here? And I'm not going to show you the map today, but if you saw the map of where all the flooding occurs, it actually covers a good portion of the United States. some of the flash flooding, some of it, of course, being highly devastating, like we saw in Texas. So we'll get into that as well. Lots I want to talk about today. The Great American Psyop. We'll get into that. Donald Trump says one thing, his administration says something else. We'll get into that whole aspect. The war on Christianity. And the reason why I call it a silent war, if you saw, or read, my show notes this morning. And by the way, my show didn't post correctly today. I think everybody can probably find it, but for whatever reason, the graphic didn't show up. So when that happens, I'm not sure what does show up. I'll have to go back and take a look and make sure I put the correct graphic in there. Sometimes these things happen, but there is a war going on in Christianity. And I would have never thought with Donald Trump in the White House that we would continue to see and assist the war on Christianity, but that's exactly what we're doing. We did it under Democrats. I always knew Democrats hated Christians, but I Democrats in Congress, I should say, not necessarily Democrats, people we know in our communities. But we'll get into that. Lots of stuff to talk about today. Uh, quite honestly, I don't know. I'm so frustrated. This morning I was thinking, why am I even doing a show at all? I don't want to talk about this stuff. I'm so frustrated with it all. I would rather talk about gardening or things I can control. I cannot control the government. I cannot control what they do. None of us can as Americans. By me saying me, I mean all of us as Americans. You vote for one thing, you don't always get what you vote for. And you maybe only get certain pieces of what you vote for. And that, certainly seems to be the situation here. Good morning, Sandy. And it's frustrating for me. I know it's frustrating for some of you also to wake up in the morning, go to bed at night thinking about these things. Things were bad under Democrats. They were bad. There's no question things are better. They're a lot better. We're seeing things improve. We're seeing prices go down. The inflation index I read yesterday was like at 1.66%. Things are getting better. I'm not down to $1.36 a gallon in gas like I was in Trump's prior term, but I think I've been paying right around $2.99, something along those lines. Some of you possibly paying less. Good morning, Karen. The price of eggs down. Remember how crazy the price of eggs were there for a while. But overall, grocery prices are still up. Meat prices are still sky high. And that's not Trump's fault. These are things that are going to happen. I hope at some point we get these things under control. But a lot of it depends on where you shop. I don't know about you guys and what's in your area, but where I live, I'm very fortunate. I live very near a Mennonite community, and yesterday was one of those days where I went to the Mennonite grocery store and I stocked up. Here in my area, if you go to the Mennonite store, they have lunch meats and cheeses, fresh baked breads, and all of these other things. And I'll tell you what, at their deli, the one by me has a very extensive deli. And what's great about that is not only are the prices very, very reasonable, but their deli meats are minimally processed because they come from, I think it's called Walnut Farms, which is the way I understand it, a Mennonite owned processing place. And so you can go there and you can get I got a pound of ham for $4.80, a whole pound of ham. You can get turkey. They have as a matter of fact, they have more lunch meats and cheese varieties than I have ever seen at any grocery store. American cheese, $4, it was $3.80 a pound. So, there are still other options out there. You just have to look for them. You just have to look for them. And quite honestly, I'm not going there necessarily for the bargain. I'm going there because they're minimally processed. They don't have as much junk in them as the deli stuff you find at a grocery store. And Mr. Parnell, the food costs will rise 2.9% according to the USDA. Yeah, food prices have not been going down. They're continuing at this point to go up. The dollar continues to decline. I don't blame that on Donald Trump. Since I read the other day, since 2025, the beginning of 2025, the US dollar it's declining rapidly. I mean, just a couple months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, it was like down, I think 9%. Now it's down 11%, is what I'm reading. I'm not a financial expert. I count on the experts to tell me. and 11% just in 2025. And it's declined, what, maybe 45%, since what, 1980, I believe it is. So the dollar does continue to decline. And there's a lot of factors that go into the dollar declining. Hyperinflation under Joe Biden, under a system of hyperinflation. Inflation, of course, is going down. It takes time to see results. So there are many things that are better. But at the same time, we're continuing to go through money like wildfire with the big beautiful bill. Hopefully in the end it will pay off, as Donald Trump tells us it will be. But things are better right now than what they were. It's hard sometimes to sit down and take a breather and say, okay, we're very disappointed in some policies, but we're very happy with other policies. And in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about what I call the Great American Psyop, because there is something very strange going on in the White House. I don't know what it is, but there is something very strange going on in the White House. Because if you're like me and you're, keeping up with the news 24/7, and you see Donald Trump says this, the White House says that, it's very strange whatever's happening. I don't understand it. But it is not more strange than what happened under the Biden administration. Good morning, Larry. And good morning, Vernon. Gas in Oregon is $3.74. And Vernon, I think that's good for Oregon. I'm not sure. You'll have to tell me. I know that the prices over that direction to the east are usually higher than here in the Midwest. Good morning, Glusna. Hopefully you're doing well. Larry says we're getting to the point that we can't even pay our interest on the debt. You're right, Larry. And that's why it's a big deal to a lot of people that we have eliminated the debt ceiling, which means that the debt continues to grow. And of course we're being told that we're going to make that up in tariffs. Well, I'll just jump into this part now before I backtrack a little bit to the Biden administration. But, yes, we're expected to receive in 2026 about $300 billion in tariffs. And while that is absolutely fantastic, it's absolutely fantastic. We need to see that money coming into this country. Particularly, we have the big, beautiful bill, which put us another nearly, $5 trillion in debt. But here's where the trade-off comes: as we have Senator Cruz, who is talking about how we need to give $250 billion to Israel to help them rebuild. Well, Israel is a very wealthy country. They don't need our money. Yes, I absolutely support Israel and the people, the Israelis, but they don't need our money. Where we need our money? Right here in the United States. So let's say, okay, next year in 2026, we bring in $300 billion because of these tariffs. Okay, but let's turn around and give 250 billion to Israel. Not to mention the billions we're now, of course, getting ready to fund back into Ukraine. We've already given Ukraine $300 billion. $300 billion, words out of Donald Trump's mouth just the other day. We've given Ukraine $300 billion already. We continue to fund Ukraine. It stopped for a couple days. We're going to get into that in a minute. And it's quite upsetting to me. And Vernon says, my wife wants to know whatever happened to the bird flu. Nobody talks about the bird flu anymore, do they? I guess it disappeared with the Democrats. Jay says, Fed chair is costing the country millions by not lowering the interest rate. Yeah, interest rates are absolutely outrageous. It's really hurting our housing market. People paying some very serious interest charges for vehicles, for their homes, for everything, gas, food, you name it. We got it. And somebody was just messaging me the other day telling me that they're in this situation where they're using, and a lot of people do this. I don't, but a lot of people use credit cards to purchase groceries, to purchase gasoline, to pay their utility bills. So what ends up happening, and because people say, well, how is the interest rate related to your groceries or to gasoline or these other things? Because, a lot of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And a lot of Americans have credit cards or trying to maintain their credit score. So they take out these credit cards and they use the credit cards for all of their purchases, everything. Gasoline, like I said, food, medical bills, hair care, whatever it is they're getting, medicine, they're using their credit cards for. And some of these are very high interest credit cards. The person who messaged me was paying 39, I think 0.9% interest. And what this person is doing is whenever they receive their paycheck, they pay off the credit card. So they're paying off the credit card or paying as much as they can to the credit card. But, on the months that they can't pay it off in full, which here lately they said is more often than not, then they're paying, 39.9% on groceries, on gasoline, on their medical expenses and everything else. And we've just gotten ourselves in a trap as Americans that we just can't seem to climb out of. And I try to be very careful. I still try to pay cash for everything when I can or use a debit card. I try not to use a credit card for anything, that I don't have to, for those big purchases. I try to save them up for big purchases, but it's difficult. It's a very difficult situation. I know, I like a lot of you, I've traveled all over this country. I was up and down through Georgia, North Carolina, and some other areas, of course, when I was getting out the vote for Donald Trump. And you see it, I see it. Most of America is fairly poor, and by poor, I mean that these days, and this is a fact based on a lot of different studies. If you don't make over $100,000 for a two-parent household with children, you're not doing too well. You're living paycheck to paycheck. And some people might want to say, well, me and my wife and my kids, we could live very well off $100,000. But when you think about it, housing is really high right now. Renting is really high. Groceries are high. Gas is high. Interest rates are high. It's very difficult for people to live. It really is. And you see it. You go into these communities and you see people struggling. And here lately, I've seen it, I think, more than I used to see it. And that's has nothing to do with Donald Trump and elections or anything else, because most of what this is all residual, from the Biden administration, of course, in my opinion, anyway. But I've seen more elderly people struggling lately to buy groceries and medicine, and it's really it worries me. We're seeing more people on the street. Homelessness is continuing to increase, and it's frustrating to me because I don't want to give anyone, has nothing to do with Israel. I don't want to give anyone 250, billion dollars. I just don't want to do it because we need 250 billion dollars right here. Let's give 250 billion dollars to Texas to rebuild after these floods, to North Carolina and Georgia, and other states to recover from Hurricane Helene. How about that? How about we take 250 billion dollars and tackle the drug problem in this country or the mental health crisis in this country, which intertwine, of course? Or how about we take $250 billion dollars and help families who are, doing their best to get by, but just can't seem to manage? I would like to know, how many ways we can spend that $250 billion dollars besides giving it to Israel, who already is a wealthy country. They don't need our money. They don't need our money. Ukraine, believe it or not, Ukraine is a very wealthy country. They don't need our money. And even Donald Trump said this the other day, and I don't know if he slipped or not, but or if he meant to say this, and I don't know if that's part of the clip I'm going to show in a bit or not. But he said that if we, the United States, didn't give weapons to Ukraine, that the war would have been over in 4 days. So think about that. If we didn't give weapons to Ukraine, we being us, of course, in Europe, us being the larger depositor of those weapons and other financial aid to Ukraine, the war would have been over. Why are we in this war with Ukraine? That's what I want to know. Now we're going to be funding Ukraine. I don't get it. And Mr. Pardo says we're to give Israel 3.8 billion a year of military. Yes, under Obama, we do. We finance the Iron Dome. There's no question about it. And I don't know. I want to go back to America first. I feel like that's what I voted for. That's number one on my agenda is America first. And I am seeing a lot of America first, no question about it. But there are some issues that still do greatly irk me. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to backtrack to Biden because there's a lot going on still with the Trump administration and backtracking back to some of the things that Democrats do. You can kind of look at Trump's agenda and see what it is he's gearing on. And one is Butler, Pennsylvania, of course, the incident there. There were 5 FBI agents who I believe are placed on leave right now. And while that is investigated, their involvement and so on. And really their lack of involvement. So we'll see where that goes. We know he's been concentrating on what actually took place in Butler, Pennsylvania when he was nearly assassinated. Still a lot of Democrats saying that never even happened, yet we know it is. We saw it. Plenty of television cameras, or plenty of cameras there in general, which does make you kind of wonder. There was a lot of press there that day that had never attended a Trump rally, but there they were. And then we also, have the situation where we are launching investigations into, of course, Comey and Brennan over the Russia hoax. Now, I saw an interview, I'm not going to play it, but I saw an interview with John Brennan who said, I don't know anything about this. No one has told me I'm part of any investigation. And he went on to agree, with the Russia hoax and tell us how it was actually true, that all this did take place. And it never ends. But more than anything, what's been going on is I've been watching, and I'm sure you have too, some of the back and forth interrogations going on over Biden's mental capacity and the use of the auto pen. A lot of people calling out, well, if Biden was at the White House on this day, why was the auto pen used? It's not supposed to be used unless they have to use it. It's usually used for, signing a president's name to a letter, or something, cards, holiday cards, or very minor things that don't really matter, not giving pardons to Biden's entire family and to Fauci and all these other people. And then we have, of course, Biden's doctor. Did you see that? The video of Biden's doctor. He pled the fifth to every question asked of him. I've got just a little snippet of it that I'm going to play, but and there's no reason to play the whole thing because he gave the same answer every single time. Every single time. These days, I got to press my buttons really hard.
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer.
Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician's patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Every question they asked him, oh, no, I'm going to plead the fifth. I'm not going to answer. I'd like to stand over that guy with my fist in his face and say, answer the question. Oh, there's a fly on me. Answer the question. Answer the question. And, it's his right to plead the fifth. But I think that tells us everything we need to know, doesn't it? Every question he was asked, every single one, was Biden fit to serve as president? Nope, pleading the fifth. Not going to answer. Now, good and well, if that was Donald Trump's doctor, he would be standing up there saying, yes, he's fit to serve as president. Yes, he is. Yes, we're telling the public the truth about his health. Absolutely would be giving answers. And so it tells us everything we need to know because this guy doesn't have to plead the fifth. He has chosen to plead the fifth. His attorneys have told him he has to. It was one of the biggest shams on this country. I used to think Obama was the biggest sham ever played on the American people. Now we know it's Joe Biden, who, as we always thought, but doesn't that go to show you that we actually know what's going on? And by that, I'm going to use that against everybody here in a few minutes. It goes to show under Biden, we always knew what was going on. We are critical thinkers. That's what we do. We don't judge by emotion. We're not emotionally charged. We're not crying and screaming and all this other crazy stuff. We sit back and we read between the lines. We see what we see. We're able to process that information. And I think all of us knew when we saw Biden at these various speaking engagements that most of the time it wasn't him, it was a body double. Because remember again, that big, tall, thin Biden with the high butt, but that wasn't Biden. Biden's not like 6'4". I mean, come on now. That guy like towered over Jill, not Biden. We knew it wasn't him. We always knew he was not cognitive. How many times have we all joked about him sitting in his basement eating pudding and about how the handlers in the background are really, nurses taking care of him and so on. But in the end, it's actually true. We all said that, he sat down and signed all those blank books and he didn't sign a darn thing. The auto pen signed everything. What we saw was true. We knew it when we saw it and we were right. Now we're having all that validation. But why is it that people want to tell us what we see happening in the White House right now with Donald Trump that we're all crazy? That's what I'd like to know. Good morning, Michelle. Allison, the White House waived his executive privilege, so there was no reason to take the fifth. Exactly, Allison. Thank you for adding that in. He took the fifth because he knows that if he told us the truth, what do you think would happen? It would invalidate every single thing that Biden did. And they're not going to let that happen. They are not going to let it happen. But I'll tell you what, I don't know about you guys. I call it the Great American Psyop. That's what I call it. Because I'll tell you what, we have Donald Trump saying one thing and we have his handler saying something else. Do you remember last week when we were told that farm workers would not, I'm not going to use the word amnesty, but we were told that farm workers would be excluded. They would be in a special group of illegals to where they could stay in the country, they could continue working. Well, now we have the agriculture secretary saying, nope, that's not true. That is not true. Farm workers here in the United States, they're not receiving amnesty. We're still on phase one of deporting, of course, criminals, but the folks who work at the farms, they're not giving any special choice to stay in this country. They will also be asked to self-deport, and when they don't, they will also be deported. It's like, I'm like, what in the world is going on? And then we have the back and forth over Ukraine. I don't know if you remember that. Now, Donald Trump, I may not like what he's doing, but I think he always tells us the truth. I mean, that I will say about him. I did not see he himself use the words, there's no Epstein file, there's nothing to look at. He had his cabinet members do that for him. I feel like Donald Trump does tell us the truth, but I think a lot of his handlers are kind of backtracking on things or trying to skirt around the truth. And they did this back and forth with Ukraine because they were saying, oh, we're going to stop funding to Ukraine. And Donald Trump said, oh, no, we need to send Ukraine more weapons. And then his handlers, Carolyn Levitt in particular said, oh, no, we stopped funding to Ukraine. We have no plans to fund Ukraine. We're not going to be sending any more weapons to Ukraine. And then guess what happens? We're sending more weapons to Ukraine. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? Now, we're still in the works of sending them Patriot missile defense systems, of course, but we are sending them, some artillery and some rockets. We stopped for a couple days. For a while there, I had high hopes that maybe we were done with the situation. What happens between Ukraine and Russia, as far as I'm concerned, that's not our business. It's not our business. But what I want to know is why Donald Trump tells us one thing and his administration tells us something totally different. Why is Donald Trump saying, yes, we are going to send more weapons to Ukraine? And then Carolyn Levitt will take her podium just a few minutes later and say, oh, no, we're not sending anything to Ukraine. I don't get what's going on. I don't get what's going on. Paul says, I believe Trump said the workers can stay as long as the farm owners vouched for them. He did, but then the agriculture secretary came back, Brooke Rollins, said it's not true. There's no amnesty for farm workers. They'll be deported just like anyone else. And Kim says the backpedaling by the Trump administration all of a sudden is disheartening and not what I voted for. I agree, Kim. It's strange what is going on. And I'm going to play a couple of pieces here from things that Trump has said, and we're going to talk about this just a little bit. Now, I'm not playing in these any particular order, but we'll see what Donald Trump has to say here, and then we're going to go through these one at a time.
Sure. Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the native staff?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, ma'am, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean,
Are you planning to send more weapons to Ukraine?
we're going to send some more weapons. We have to. They have to be able to defend themselves. They're getting hit very hard now. They're getting hit very hard. We're going to have to send more weapons. Your defensive weapons, primarily, but they're getting hit very, very hard. So many people.
Okay. Let's talk about this. Okay, well, did you see Pete Hegseth? Oh, shaking his head. Yep. We got some more weapons to Ukraine. Who are these people? That's what I want to know. Who are these people? Do you know how many times I've heard Pete Hegseth talk about how we have to stop sending weapons to Ukraine? We have to stop sending weapons to Ukraine. Now he's over there nodding like, yeah, we got to do it. Yes, man. I'm losing respect for a lot of these people. But I get it. They're in a position. What are they supposed to do? If the government says, and Donald Trump sits there and says, yes, we're sending weapons to Ukraine, then you got to fall in line and you got to agree, or you're going to be replaced. You're out. So, what's the situation there? I'm so frustrated with all of it. Kim says, see, it's like he's sweeping things under the rug. That's exactly what he's doing. Mr. Parnot, IAEA and DNI report stated Iran does not have nuclear weapons, and Trump said they are wrong. Yeah, I mean, the back and forth was, did Iran have nuclear weapons or not? I don't know that we'll ever know, because it's we're going to see the back and forth, and we don't know. You have to, I think, just judge for yourself. You just have to judge for yourself. I am personally very upset about weapons going back to Ukraine, because guess what? That's your money. Remember how I was just talking a minute ago about Americans struggling, about how we need to put America first? I thought that's what we were voting for, America first. And America is first in many ways, like I said at the very beginning of the show. And I'm going to remind everybody once again, there is more good than bad going on with the Trump administration, but you can't ignore the bad, because these are big policies that we voted against. We could have just carried on with Biden if we wanted some of these things, but I'm not going to go that far, because of course Donald Trump is far better than Biden, far better than what Kamala Harris would be doing. I think we are fighting far harder for our law enforcement and their safety. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But Dottie says, maybe they've all been replaced. You mean with aliens? Yeah, you get your little alien face down there. What do you do? Let's say Donald Trump hires you to be a secretary of whatever field, and you are wanting what's best for this country. You're wanting what's best for your community, the people around you. So you take the job, you get into office, and then you're like, yay, we're here. Let's make America great again. Let's put America first. Let's do what we can for Americans. Let's give us all a better living situation, a better life. And hey, things are all gung ho. We're going to get rid of all these people in our country who came here illegally, who are committing violent crimes, like seriously violent crimes. And we're all like, wow, great. Our southern border crossings are down, almost non-existent. We finally got closed borders. We're, getting all the criminals out. We're ramping up on violent crime, across the United States. We're, and these things are truly happening. We're tackling trafficking of children, great things. We're remodeling FEMA and some of these other rescue organizations. We saw the success of that there in Texas. Immediate response, Donald Trump on the phone on day one, within those first couple of hours, ask, those folks in Texas, Lieutenant Governor, what do you need? They say, we need Black Hawk helicopters. They're there in a couple hours. There's some wonderful things happening. These are all great things. But let's say you're Pete Hegseth over there, and you've talked for, I don't know how many years now, about how we need to stop funding Ukraine. And then Donald Trump, the person who hired you, who appointed you, says, oh, nope, you know what? I'm not happy with Russia right now. We've tried to talk to Putin. Marco Rubio met with Putin yesterday, and I'm assuming that this is how this all came about, with the fact that we are now again going to arm Ukraine, is that Donald Trump wants to create peace. We know that. He said it from day one. His biggest agenda is creating peace. That's never been a secret. And so therefore, he is doing his best to negotiate. And he's done this from day one of his presidency, even before day one, quite honestly, started working on this, that he wants to create peace. He wants Netanyahu and Zelensky to agree to a ceasefire. Now, according to the Trump administration, Ukraine and Zelensky have agreed to a ceasefire. We don't know the terms. Remember, early on, they were telling us what the terms of the ceasefire were. They don't do that anymore. So we don't know what the negotiations are. But either way, Putin, they claim, is holding back. He's not wanting to partake in the ceasefire. And we did suspend, we've been funding Ukraine since Donald Trump was first in office. That's not unusual. A lot of that was left over from the Biden administration. But then at one point, they finished what the Biden administration had previously funded. So now we're kind of on track funding it through the Trump administration. So there's a big difference between finalizing and sending out what Biden had appropriated versus us funding and sending it ourselves. Big difference. And I tell you, I didn't play the end of that video, but then Trump will go on and say that we've already sent Ukraine $300 billion. Now, we had that little cease in which we stopped sending the equipment to and the artillery and everything else to Ukraine. And I think that's because we were really hoping that Putin would talk peace with us. Marco Rubio went there yesterday. I don't think it's any coincidence at all that all of a sudden Donald Trump said, nope, we're going to continue sending weapons to Ukraine. Obviously, the talks with Rubio probably didn't go well. And so now Donald Trump will do anything he can to make sure that Putin pays for not agreeing with us. And, we see it happening. Donald Trump, of course, coming out against BRICS countries. Something just moved on my desk. Donald Trump wanting to talk about BRICS and the things that BRICS are doing, wanting to, of course, crush the dollar. We're crushing it ourselves. I don't think BRICS needs to help us. But long before BRICS came into the picture, our dollar, of course, was going down. And Paul says, I believe that Trump was given latitude at the beginning of his term, as long as it didn't upset the apple cart of the powers that be, whoever that is. Now they are reining in his administration from exposing too much. Maybe, we saw when things were going down with Doge and Doge was going in and making all those cuts at the USAID, we were thrilled to death, weren't we? I mean, we were so ecstatically happy. How did it go from all of that to this? All of a sudden, and maybe you're right, Paul, maybe we pushed things too far. And that resulted in Elon Musk's departure from the Department of Doge. And, Vivek Ramaswamy, remember, he was originally going to be working with Elon Musk in that Department of Government Efficiency, and he departed early on. Maybe he saw what was to come, later down the road. We did cut funding, and a lot of that funding we cut was going to these non-governmental organizations that were just started a couple months before, the Doge department was investigating. So we've done really wonderful things. And maybe we were just off to such a great start that now a lot of us feel very let down. But as I was saying earlier, part of the Great American Psyop that I'm, referring to it as is that things were moving along really well. We were all very happy with the direction things were going. And when Joe Biden was president, when Obama was president, it was very easy to look at what was unfolding before us. We called it for what we saw it. We knew there were body doubles. We knew that something weird was going on with the pardons and all this other stuff. And of course, everything that we thought when people told us to put on our tinfoil hats again, it all turned out to be true. We all had that validation that everything we thought was happening actually was happening. Now with Donald Trump, it's a whole different story, because those of us who used our critical thinking skills during the Biden and Obama administrations and we saw things for what they were, now all of a sudden our fellow conservatives are telling us we're crazy. We're supposed to look the other way. Somebody on my Facebook page actually told me the other day that I need to stop talking about this stuff because I'm losing more credibility than I already had been losing, because it's okay to tell the truth when it's the Biden administration. It's not okay to tell the truth when it's the Trump administration, because I can guarantee you I have not changed at all. I told the truth the way I saw it during the Biden administration, during the Obama administration, during Trump's other administration. I've been around for a long time telling the truth as I see it. Doesn't mean I'm always correct, of course, but I think we've seen the validation of most of those truths that we've all been saying. But now all of a sudden, when it's Trump making those missteps and doing things that we don't like, If you're not 100% behind Donald Trump, agreeing with everything he does, if you're not that yes man that we saw Pete Hegseth being a few minutes ago, shaking his head yes to we have to fund Ukraine, then you're just a terrible person. You're not really a conservative. You're not a Christian. You have no credibility. Well, I'm not a yes man. I don't think most of you are either. I'm not going to be that person who's sitting next to Donald Trump at the table saying, yeah, we need to fund Ukraine. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I would have got up out of that seat. I wouldn't even be in that seat. I would have left a long time ago. The minute they said, we're going to go back to funding Ukraine, or, we're going to not release the Epstein list, I would have been up and out of there. I've been, nope, 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 nope. This is not what I signed up for. I'm not going to sit there and nod my head yes. Does that make me a bad person? I'm still saying that things under the Trump administration are more good than bad. I'm I will never change my mind about that. We're not there yet. There's still more good than bad, but Trump has had some serious missteps. The other day, right out of the Obama playbook, remember Timber Sycamore? Yes, I'm sure many of you do, because especially if you listen to this show, because I've talked about it only thousands of times. Timber Sycamore, the largest failed CIA operation ever in the history of the United States under the Obama administration. And that is when we faked out the American people. Our government does a lot of lying to the American people. And we told Americans that we were going into Syria to fight ISIS. I'm sure we all remember, a lot of Americans being burned alive in cages. I remember. And we saw women and children being pulled out of their homes and or horrifically raped and murdered, and many of them also being burned alive and killed in horrific ways. We saw it with our own eyes because there was a lot of coverage of that. We can't deny that that ever happened. And of course, those were Islamic groups, jihadis, who were going through Syria, who were trying to oust Assad. So Obama comes up with this brilliant plan, and he says, okay, there's a terror group out there. Their name is Al-Nusra. Now, here's a news flash for you. Al-Nusra is only the Syrian name of Al-Qaeda. Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda are the same people. They're the same group of people. Literally, Al-Nusra is just the Syrian word for Al-Qaeda. That's the only difference. So Obama said, well, Al-Nusra is a moderate terror group. They're moderate. They only burn people alive in cages, but they're much more moderate than some of these other people out there, which to some degree is true. They're more moderate than the Salafis or the Army of Islam, but not by much. They all kill, murder, and rape people. So they're all terrorists. In my opinion, there's no such thing as a moderate terrorist. So Obama said under Project Timber Sycamore, which was all secret, by the United States, of course, government, he said, well, we're going to start supporting these al-Nusra moderate terrorists. We're going to fund them with, I think it was $500 billion. We're going to train them. We sent our United States Special Forces into Syria to train al-Nusra operatives. And we're going to fund them. We're going to give them arms. We gave them grenade launchers. We gave them any kind of weapon you could possibly imagine. And we're going to go fight ISIS, is what, of course, the government was telling us. But in fact, under Obama's plan was never to fight ISIS. The plan was always to use al-Nusra, again, the same thing as Al-Qaeda, to oust Assad. That was Obama's plan because Obama wanted the jihadists to establish their Islamic caliphate in Syria. That's what he wanted because Assad was the only thing standing in the way. And of course, under Biden, now Donald Trump in his first term, he stopped, of course, that situation with Timber Sycamore. And the reason why it was the largest failed operation ever is A, they did not oust Assad at the time, and B, they turned on our special forces. They chased all of them out of the country. Our special forces had to flee and run into Turkey so that these people didn't kill them. Only one al-Nusra rebel remained true to the United States out of the entire group. It was a huge failure on the Obama administration. But here we are, Donald Trump in 2025. What have we done? We have decided that eventually, now, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit here because I think you guys all know this, but we'll backtrack for a second, that just recently, do you recall just recently, these same al-Nusra folks, Al-Qaeda, took over Syria. They forced Assad out. He fled. He's in Moscow right now, probably living his best life, not having to worry about this nonsense. They killed his family. And Assad, of course, being an Alawite, he celebrates Christian holidays. They've assassinated most of the Alawites in Syria. They're still continuing to do so, persecuting Christians, dragging Christians out of their home, which is what I call the secret war on Christianity. But under the Trump administration, we once again support al-Nusra. We once again support Al-Qaeda, with Donald Trump, of course, as our newly elected president, telling Americans, we're going to remove Syria from the terror watch list. And of course, that means that, remember Al-Jilani? We just talked about him, recently. Al-Jilani at one time had a $10 million bounty on his head by us Americans because he's a terrorist. He's a terrorist. But now under the Trump administration, he's not a terrorist anymore. And it's something that's very upsetting to me. Very upsetting to me. Brennan says Trump was better choice, Trump was the better choice, being the other choice was Kamala. Oh, Trump was the better choice no matter what, because we are certainly winning in many areas, but there are areas in which we're not winning. But what my frustration is I wish that my fellow conservatives would wake up and be as angry as I am so that we can have these issues addressed. Instead, we are doing just what Trump is doing with the Epstein list. We're sweeping it under the rug, and we're telling ourselves, and that's why it's a big psyop operation. We're all telling ourselves that it's okay. We're doing so many great things in this country still, and we are. There's no question that we are. That we have to look the other way when it comes to these issues. We have to look the other way, saying that Syria is no longer a terrorist country. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I know an awful lot of people who fought and lost their friends and loved ones to Al-Qaeda, and all of a sudden now Al-Qaeda, they're not terrorists anymore. Nope. Now they're our buddies. And it's very upsetting to me, and it should be upsetting to you. I'm not okay with funding Ukraine. It should upset everyone. I'm not going to sweep it under the rug, and I'm not going to look the other way just because we are doing so many other great things. We could do more great things by saying, no, Syria is still a terrorist country. We're not going to be dealing with them in business. We could also say, we're not giving Ukraine any other money. This is not our fight. It's not our fight. Didn't we used to say that? Under Biden, didn't we say it wasn't our fight? We're not giving money to Ukraine. All of a sudden now it's okay. And it's killing me to see my fellow conservatives, people I have a lot of respect for, saying, oh, it's okay. If Donald Trump sees it fit to fund Ukraine, then it's the right thing to do. But it wasn't the right thing to do under Biden. See, I'm not that fair weather friend. I'm that person who says, okay, it wasn't right under Biden. It's not right under Trump either. I may absolutely love Trump as a president and as a person, but a couple of these actions, it's just not right. It's not right. And it does upset me, and then when it comes to the Epstein list, don't even get me started. I'm not even going to get into that fully. But what upsets me more about the Epstein list is, Americans know there is a list. Allegedly, last night, there was a leaker, supposedly, as he called himself Island Boy, I guess because of Jeffrey Epstein's island. And on the dark web, he released a list of names. I'm not going to read them. I have them. I saved it. I don't think there's any names on there that would surprise you. There are a lot of the names we already saw. But the reason why I'm not going to read those names is because we don't know, is it a real list or is it not? Who is this person? Where did they get the list? Maybe it's Elon Musk. I don't know. But where did they get the list of names? And a lot of the names are people we would expect to be on there and that we've heard were on the list. So there's no way to verify that it's the true list. So there's just no point really in talking about it. But I don't think there's any coincidence that that made the announcement that as a matter of fact, you saw it in that video underneath Donald Trump while he's admonishing, that reporter for asking about Epstein. It says Netanyahu, of course, nominates Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I know Donald Trump wants that Nobel Peace Prize. I'm not going to say that we got rid of the list so that Donald Trump could get the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to say, and this is only my speculation, I cannot confirm this, it's just my speculation, my reading between the lines, which I think we've gotten pretty good at, quite honestly. And I think we always see that validation later down the road. That was true in the Biden administration. I don't think it's going to be any different in the Trump administration. Is that I don't think that's any coincidence. I'm not speaking bad about Israel or Israelis, but I absolutely do believe that Jeffrey Epstein probably was an asset. He probably did blackmail a lot of very high-ranking officials in the government and other, people across the world. And I absolutely do think that our government had those tapes showing these various officials. And I'm not saying one of those was Netanyahu, but if you look at the list that was released last night and some of the names that have been mentioned before, Netanyahu's name has never been on that list, but their former prime minister was, as well as other Israeli officials, people in the government, as well as many Americans and people from around the world, a lot of different elites and people in Hollywood, and the names you would expect to see. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Donald Trump, being the smart man he is, I'm not saying I still want to see the list. I'm not giving him an excuse, but I do believe that Netanyahu came to the White House that day to pick up the files. Donald Trump probably said, "Hey, we've uncovered these files. We've got these videos. Here are some of your people in these videos. If you come here to the United States, I'm going to personally hand you these files. You're going to nominate me for the Nobel Peace Prize because I am creating peace by not releasing this information. And then we're going to work a deal." And he probably did that in Pakistan. Pakistan also nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I think he's probably gone around to a lot of folks in a lot of different countries and said, "Hey, this is what we have on your country in these files. Let's make a deal. I'm going to give you these files. In exchange, you're going to do this, this, and this." Now, that's what I feel like is happening. Now, despite that, and despite the fact that I think that Donald Trump probably make these deals, which probably are for the better, for the United States. I don't like the way they're handling the situation. I don't like it. I don't want them to say that no one is responsible, that there is no list. We're not stupid. We're not stupid. And the way Donald Trump handled it with that reporter, think about that. That would be you. That's how he feels about us Americans asking about the Epstein list. We shouldn't ask about it. It was very clear he does not plan on talking about the Epstein list ever again. It is never to be brought up because they will never talk about it again. Now, still, what we are left with is a bunch of people who have uh, assaulted children who are not being held accountable. Now, I guess as a president, you have to weigh things out. What's more important? Is it more important to prosecute these child predators, or is it more important for our national security to work out these deals to where we're using these videotapes as leverage? That's a decision for him. But the way that they handle it with the American people is very wrong, because we're not stupid. We know there's a list. We know there's video. What we wanted was transparency, didn't we? That's what we voted for. It wouldn't be a bad step, in my opinion, a misstep to tell the American people, "Hey, yes, we have an Epstein list. Yes, we have these videos, and we're not going to release them because we're going to be using these to accomplish other goals." I mean, I think we'd all be like, "Okay, good. We get it," right? Instead of being like, "Oh, there's nothing to see here." Watching these people lie, people we like, people we voted for, people we wanted to see in office as a band together, lying to our faces. And I know they're lying to our faces. And Glenn says, "Was Trump on the list?" Glenn, I still do not think Donald Trump was on that list. I really don't. I don't think Donald Trump is on the Epstein list. And the list that I saw that was released on the dark web last night, Donald Trump's name is not on that list that I saw. I didn't read through the whole list because it was very long, but I did not see Donald Trump's name on that list. But I'm going to look again later. And again, we can't verify if that list is true or not. There were no surprises on that list. Lori says, "We criticize liberals for blindly following. We should not idolize either." You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Curtis is saying hello to Mary. Hello, Mary. I don't see you on there, but I guess you are here. And Joe says, "We were funding the Ukraine under the Biden administration for the wrong reasons. The enrichment of the Biden family. Personally, I don't believe we should be funding them under any administration." Joe Lynette, I couldn't agree with you more. And now the difference may be, let's backtrack to Hamas, okay, as just an example. The Obama administration funded Hamas. They sent them millions and billions of dollars, over the years. It amounted to billions of dollars. Now, with Obama, that money went directly to Hamas, and Hamas was supposed to take that money and kind of delegate it out to different areas, in the Gaza West Bank region to the people. And they weren't doing that. Of course, they were keeping most of it and holding a lot of those people hostage. And when Trump came into office, Trump didn't stop funding the Palestinian people. He just changed the route of funding. So we continued to send money into Gaza, the West Bank area, but he didn't go through the same channels. So that money didn't go directly to Hamas. Now, a lot of it probably ended up in the hands of Hamas. Now, the situation in Ukraine, we just don't know. We don't know. We know that what happened with us funding Ukraine under the Biden administration, that what was happening is a lot of the weapons that we sent over ended up on the black market. A lot of the actual money, cash we sent over ended up in what we understand, and Putin claims he has this information and he has these files, went directly into Zelensky's pocket and into the pocket of his fellow parliament members and into the pocket of a lot of US Congress folks. Now, of course, Putin claims he has these files and he will release them. He hasn't released them yet, but he claims he will. And he claims that he has a list of names in the United States Congress that received direct kickbacks from the Ukrainian funding. And now, under Donald Trump, do we have a better system? I've not heard them say we have a better system like they did with Hamas. Are we still going through the same channels, or are we funding them and going through different channels? And quite honestly, I don't care. I really don't care. If we could track every single artillery that went over there and said, okay, here's the artillery, here it is, it's being loaded, it's being blobbed over to Russia. I don't care. It's not our battle. It's not our fight. We'll never win it. I don't care if we send everything we have to Ukraine, Russia. They're just going to always be better, to Ukraine. There's no fighting, no winning the situation, and we shouldn't be doing it. It's extremely upsetting to me. Paul says, Miss Bondi stated that the New York office of the FBI had destroyed evidence and impeded her access to any and all classified documents. And Paul, Pam Bondi has said a lot of things, hasn't she? I can remember when she said, "Oh, I got the files on my desk and I've read through them and I've seen all these horrific videos and I'm going to sort through all of this stuff and blah 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 blah." They were supposed to hand all that information over to Anna Paulina Luna, which they never did. Remember that day, and I know you do, when we all waited for that news conference in the morning. They all had their little Epstein binders. Remember? Oh, it's so exciting. We're going to reveal all the information today. Nothing. They revealed absolutely nothing. There was nothing in those binders, but I think there was something in those binders. I think originally that Pam Bondi did have those files and she did have those videos and she did have a lot of that information. Maybe not all of it, because I do believe that they over there in the Southern District in New York City that they did get rid of a lot of information. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they got rid of it. I think they just put it or gave it to somebody else for safekeeping. But I do think that Pam Bondi had a lot of information. And I think at the last minute, she was told, we're not releasing it. We're not going to release it. And that's why she looked like a complete fool. And I don't blame her. I actually like Pam Bondi. I do not blame her at all. I blame the Trump administration. I think that they did have file folders. I think they were very, excited about revealing what they knew. Then at the last minute, somebody pulled the plug. It made her look like an idiot. She's probably not very happy. Her stint with the White House is not going well for her. It's probably not going to go well for Pete Hegseth or Bongino or Patel or a lot of these other people either, because they're lying through their teeth and the American people know it. You know what? Just tell us the truth. That's all we want to know. If you tell us, hey, we can't reveal these files because there's just too much information here that's going to incriminate a lot of people and it's going to destroy our economy and we're going to end up in a war over it, just tell us. We'd say, okay, we get it. There probably is a lot of information there. We understand. We know the names that are involved, but don't gaslight us and tell us that it didn't happen. There is no list. You don't have those files. And B, that we shouldn't talk about it, that it's old news. You're done hearing about it. No, Mr. Donald Trump. No, nope. Paul says part of Trump's reelection was the Epstein List. He can't pretend that it didn't happen and that it wasn't a priority. I agree completely. But again, and I'm going to say this, dotted throughout any show I have, we are doing far more good than bad. Donald Trump is doing far more good than bad. There are still some really fantastic things that are taking place across our country. There's more good than bad. And we'll be talking, a lot more about some of this in the days, the other, I did think this was kind of funny. Now that we're going to talk just briefly about it, is did you know that Donald Trump endorsed Lindsey Graham for 2026? And I'm like, what is happening? Am I living in like some Saturday Night live skit? Is it some kind of punked episode? Are we being punked? So this is what Donald Trump posted on Truth Social. Happy birthday to Senator Lindsey Graham. He is always here when I need him. And I hope everyone in the great state of South Carolina will help Lindsey have a big win in his reelection bid next year. Make America great again. Now, what in the world is happening there? Is that really not Donald Trump? Is there like a joke being played on the American people? Who in the world wants Lindsey Graham to win again? I don't. But I mean, maybe there's something going on here, and that's just it. I think Donald Trump is a very intelligent man. I think he is doing what's best for this country. But why doesn't he just tell us what's going on so that we're not all sitting here hating on him? Why doesn't he say, you know what, I'm working on certain things in the best interest of the national security of this country. And no, you may not understand it. We, the government, we can't tell you everything, American people. We would like to tell you everything, but we can't tell you everything. You just have to trust us. But he's not giving us that message at all. Why is he buddying up to NATO? I thought we were going to withdraw from NATO. One of the things I voted for was withdrawing for NATO. It was a big point for me heading into this election. Now, all of a sudden, we're best friends with NATO. We have Mark Rutte jokingly, referring to Trump as daddy, which was just funny, by the way. And now, all of a sudden, we're funding Ukraine. We're buddying up to Lindsey Graham, the biggest warmonger in our country. What is happening, people? What is happening? And I can't be the only one seeing it. And please don't hate on me for telling the truth, because that's all I'm doing is telling you the truth. But there is still far more good than bad. And I'm trying to hope that whatever Donald Trump is doing is for the best for our national security. And but it's really difficult to look at us calling Al-Qaeda, taking them off the terror list, giving more weapons to Ukraine, thinking about giving $250 billion to Israel when we need that money right here in our own country. Americans desperately need that money. And even more so every day with all the flooding going on, which we're going to jump into for a minute. I played a video, by the way, at the very beginning of the show, and it's pretty funny. I'm going to play it again at the end of the show. I hope I remember to do that. And because a lot of you probably didn't see it at the beginning. And trust me, we're going to be talking more. I'm going to be here tomorrow. We'll be talking more about this stuff tomorrow, because we're probably going to get some other big blast tonight that Donald Trump, I don't know. He said aliens don't exist. If Donald Trump comes up and says aliens don't exist, there's no other life out there, I think I'm done. I think I'll officially be done. We've never even heard about the drones, right? Weren't we even supposed to hear about the drones too? And that's what we Americans want, don't we? We just want transparency. We want to know that the things we see and know are real. Stop gaslighting us and not telling us the truth. We're all adults and we can handle it. So this flooding taking place all across the country is pretty darn crazy. Dottie, if you're still on the show, living through it in North Carolina, a lot of people, we saw the devastation, of course, in Texas with all of the lives lost, still 178, I believe it is 173 people missing. We learned that the 27 of the little girls and counselors from Camp Mystic perished in the flood. Some people dispute that, but it's unfortunately, a fact. There is still 6 missing from Camp Mystic, which are, I believe, counselors, maybe 5. I don't know. There's a mix of counselors and children. But look at the flooding that's taking place. This is all just in the month of July, just in a short couple of days. Texas, of course, and of course, Kerr County having well over 100 deaths, many more people, of course, missing. North Carolina had posts from July 8th and 9th. New Mexico, flash flooding. Arkansas, Oklahoma, Illinois, of course, and Chicago. Massachusetts, we have Virginia, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Iowa, Maryland, and Wisconsin. Now, I saw Missouri on another list. I don't see it on this one. What is going on? And I will tell you one thing. I can bash the Trump administration right now, but I can also give them a lot of praise, because I will tell you what, when it came to this flooding particularly in Texas, they were there. They were far, far light years ahead of what happened with Helene. Remember when it took FEMA forever to get into, Helene, and set up, because they had to make sure that they were safe. They had to make sure they had a spot and all this other stuff, and then set up camp. No, that didn't happen in Texas. In Texas, Donald Trump was on the phone with the lieutenant governor asking, "What can I do for you? Anything you need, it's yours." Black Hawk helicopters we need for rescue is what was told. Black Hawk helicopters were there within just a couple of hours. And they have, if it weren't for Trump's efforts, I think for the efforts of the White House in this situation in Texas, more lives would have been lost, because we got out there, we got the resources out. Of course, hundreds of volunteers, thousands probably in the end of volunteers across Texas as well, jumping into the fray, getting their canoes out, getting their boats out, rescuing people. Now they're out there recovering bodies. We have done a fantastic job when it comes to these floodings. It's a catastrophe. We hate to see these things happen, but we've done the best we can do under the circumstances. We have done the best. Let's see, that's taking place. More flooding. There'll probably be more flooding. A lot of people, is it cloud seeding? It's kind of funny how many people I've seen recently say, "Oh yeah," people who used to say, "Oh, there's no such thing as cloud seeding." Now they're saying, "Oh yeah, cloud seeding is true." It did happen 2 days before the flooding, the flash flooding in Texas. However, they want to tell us, after 2 days, that cloud seeding, what is it that they use? Some type of salt. It's like a type of salt they put up into the clouds, and it makes the what they call a meteorite. I think I'm not probably not saying meteor lights, not like a meteor, but meteor light. It makes them expand to where the rain drops. They're very tiny particles, and then when they put these chemicals into them, it swells them and it makes the rain drop. And they're claiming, well, that would have all dissipated by the time these floods occurred. And who knows? Who knows? I don't trust anything. We know that they modify the weather. We know they do. And of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene, probably the only pure person who I actually hear from, who is also upset about, not that I personally hear from, but we hear her in, of course, the media, that is also as upset as we are about the client list for Epstein, and also trying to create a bill that ends weather modification here in the United States. And I'm sure she did that, of course, as we were hearing about the floods taking place across the United States. Just a horrific, horrific situation, as there are so many of them going on right now. Violent crime continues across this country. Look at 4th of July, and I've talked about this before. We don't need terror threats. We're killing ourselves every single day. Violence taking place across the country. I can't remember. I told you guys the other day how many deaths occurred over and shootings over 4th of July weekend. And we still have crazy protesters out wreaking absolute havoc. I want to show you, I don't have much more time, but I want to show you a quick video of San Francisco. This was in San Francisco, and these people are lunatics. Look at how dangerous this is for these ICE officers. And then we have Democrats saying that we need to make sure that these officers, that they have a patch that says ICE, and that they don't wear any type of covering over their faces so we can identify them. Now, we know that's because they want to dox them. But Democrats, I don't understand why they want to do anything they can to put the lives of law enforcement in danger. And that's exactly what they're looking to do here. It is a good thing that these ICE agents have coverings over their face. These people spit on them. They punch them in the face. I've seen numerous ICE agents being punched in the face over the past week and spit on. So take a look at this video really quick and look at this chaos in San Francisco. This is outside of an immigration court case. Pure craziness taking place. Pure craziness. What I would like to know, well, first of all, these officers are showing such restraint, aren't they? They are showing such restraint. this is a very dangerous situation for them. They don't know who within this crowd might be armed. A very, very dangerous and out of control situation. And, I really wish, sometimes I watch these and I wish they would use a little bit more force, but, I know they're doing their jobs the way they're supposed to do them. Whether we, see it or not, that is exactly what they are supposed to do. They are showing restraint. Hopefully none of these people will be armed, because we know these people, they hate these officers. They hate them. They hate ICE agents, with a passion. And then we have Democrats trying to create a bill to force ICE agents to uncover their faces. And you see, they all have vests that say police. Isn't that good enough? And then of course we have Democrats with this app that's being shared, even amongst Democrats in Congress, sharing an app that traces the location of ICE. So that way they can put the location of ICE out there so that anyone who may be trying to evade ICE will know to leave the area ahead of ICE, or at least will know where ICE is operating. Again, a danger to these agents' lives. This is how we end up having ambushes. This is how officers lose their lives. It is a huge, huge, huge danger to these officers. I hope we tackle this. To me, this is one of my number one priorities, is protecting our law enforcement and other first responders. But I'll tell you what, Florida, I'm going to play this just because it's funny. Florida handles things so differently. And this is a different situation. This is not dealing with law enforcement, but this is pretty funny. You see now a lot of these anti-ICE people, where I think they pronounce it kafia. If I don't never know if I'm saying that right, but it's the head covering. You saw it a lot in that video there, and it's the head covering that a lot of terrorists actually wear, which is kind of funny. And they're going to point this out. This is a council meeting in Florida where we have pro-Palestinian protesters coming in, thinking they're going to have a minute to say what they want to say. So take a look at this really quick.
Given any type of facilitation, that was
good. You're done too. Next, 30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds is disgusting.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Come on up. Enjoy your terrorist rag. Come on, let's go. You're next. Whoa. Come on. What's your name? I'm the chairman. I can say what I want. If you don't like it, you can leave. Come on. You're next.
You get paid by us.
I'll clear the room, and then we can move on if I hear one more outburst. I don't have to have any of you sit here. One more. I'll clear the room. We'll debate, and we'll vote. You're recognized for 30 seconds. What's your name?
All right. So I thought that was pretty funny. If I ran a council meeting, that it would probably be a lot like that. Wear your terrorist rag and say what you got to say and get out of my office. I thought it was pretty darn funny. Somebody, while we were talking, somebody sent me a message, and I do have this video. I wasn't really planning on playing it today. I was going to play it tomorrow, but it's hard for me to upload, but I was able to upload it really quick. And somebody asked me about the situation that's unfolding. I don't know if you've heard about it yet, or if you'll hear about it later, with Donald Trump. And I'm backtracking a little bit from what we were just talking about, but about Donald Trump and Russia, and China. Just recently, the NATO chair, Mark Rutte, made an interesting statement. And he said World War III is going to start with China's Xi, of course, and Russia's Putin invading some country, or invading, a couple of different countries. And that's how World War III is going to start, is they're going to attack. And now, who are they going to attack? I don't know. But I thought this was kind of funny, because there is a recently released, people are coming out at Trump. That's one thing. Democrats, don't love Trump anymore for some of his policies. I haven't heard one single Democrat applaud not releasing the Epstein file, which I think is kind of interesting. I don't think Democrats really know what to do right now with all of this stuff going on. But I do think it's interesting that a tape was released. It was a taped, I wouldn't call it in secret. Donald Trump was speaking at a fundraiser, and he was talking, he's alluded to many times what he said to Putin and what he has said to President Xi of China, and why they're scared of him, why they won't come after the United States. And that tape, I wouldn't call it leaked, because I don't think it was public. I don't think it was private. I mean, because it was at a fundraiser. But somebody asked me to play it, so I'm going to play that here. I bet you probably didn't think I had it, but I do. I saved just about every video there is, just in case I need it. So I'm going to play it really quick. And it's Donald Trump talking about how he told Putin that he would bomb Moscow, and he told Xi that he would bomb Beijing. So it's pretty interesting. We'll play this, and then I'll be heading out here in a minute. I'm going to play that video for you at the very end of the show as well.
That he once had with President Putin. The audio obtained by the authors of a new book that is just out today. And for context, the president has long said that Putin would never have invaded Ukraine on his watch because of something he told him once privately. Trump had never revealed what that was.
I had a very strong conversation with President Putin, and he understood, and I won't go into the great details of the conversation because nobody has to know that. But I will tell you, it never, ever would have happened.
I don't want to say it, but did they fear me? I suspect they did.
Well, tonight we're learning those details as the audio reveals that Trump says that he threatened not just President Putin, but also China's President Xi Jinping. And this is what he told donors about what exactly that conversation looked like during a private fundraiser last year.
To Putin, I said, if you go in to Ukraine, we're going to bomb the shit out of Moscow. I'm telling you, I have no choice. The public wants it. The public. So he goes like, I don't believe you. He said, no way. And I said, way. And then he goes like, I don't believe you. But the truth is, he believed me 10%. And I told you this. He believed me 10%. Then I'm with President Xi of China. But I said the same thing to them. I said, you know, if you go into Taiwan, I'm going to bomb the shit out of Beijing. He thought I was crazy. He said, Beijing? You're going to bomb Beijing? I said, I have no choice. I got to bomb them. We're going to bomb Beijing. And he didn't believe me either, except 10%. And 10% is all you need. In fact, 5% would have been okay too. And we never.
Okay, so now CNN, of course, played this clip because they don't like that Donald Trump said that. I'm the opposite. That's what I voted for Donald Trump for. I want him to make these threats to these other countries because you know what? The reason why, of course, China probably hasn't gone into Taiwan is exactly for that reason, because they don't trust Donald Trump. They don't know, is he being truthful or is he not? That is a positive about Donald Trump. And of course, CNN wants to turn that around against Donald Trump, but we all know that's the man we voted for. Now, I would like to see Donald Trump stand up and say, hey, yeah, there is an Epstein list. We can't show it to you because of the chaos that would ensue, but we're using it, for the betterment of our national security. I don't think there's any reason he could say we took away the terror designation from Syria unless he stood up and said, hey, well, yes, they are really terrorists, but we're going to take their terror organization, their terror designation away so that we can get to the oil in Syria, or maybe there's some other plan that I don't really understand. I don't know. I wish that they would just tell us the truth. I wish we had a little bit more transparency and that somehow we knew that all of these things that we consider to be missteps are in our best interest. I don't see that right now, but I'm past the point of trusting the plan, quite honestly. I really am. And we'll just have to see how things unfold. I'm very concerned about Christians around the world. Under the Obama administration, under the Biden administration, I didn't feel that Christians were protected at all. We go out and we fight a lot of wars, but those wars are typically not for Christians. In fact, most of the wars we fought endanger Christians. And this situation right now is no different at all. No different at all. We allowed Al-Qaeda to win in Syria. Now the Christians, of course, are being persecuted and killed. We have a situation going on right now. It took place overnight in the West Bank where we had Jewish settlers in the West Bank burn down Christian homes and churches, forcing them to leave. I haven't heard yet of any type of casualty. I don't know if there are casualties, but we'll soon find out. I feel like there's a war on Christianity that's taking place and no one talks about it. And I don't understand it. No one talks about it. And it's no different here in this country. As much as I know our country was bound in faith, bound in Christianity, and that should be the basis of our country. I wish I saw a little bit more policy going towards Christianity. And I'm not really seeing that, but it's early. There's still a lot can be done, in the next 3 years. We're not out of time yet. We'll see how things unfold. But I do wish that our foreign policy did protect Christians instead of putting them in harm's way. And I did expect that to be a little bit different under Donald Trump. I know that under Biden, Christians were always persecuted in other countries. And I still see it happening. It's unfortunate. No one talks about it. Something we need to talk a little bit more about. But either way, that's it for me today. As I said earlier, I came into the show playing this really funny video, and I'm going to play it at the end of the show as well. Usually I say that and then I forget, but I'm going to do it this time because I think it's great. I don't know who this guy is, but he came up with a cute little song, and you're going to hear it again. But I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. We will talk again tomorrow, Friday. God knows I need a Friday. I think I'm going to come out with a gardening show and forget about politics at the rate we're going. But you know what? Hang in there. Hang in there. Still more good than bad. You know, Donald Trump is still winning in so many different areas. America is still becoming more great every day. We're not winning every battle, but hey, we're going to hang in there. We're going to see what happens. That's all we can do. All right, guys, I will see you tomorrow. I hope you enjoy this little song.
Well, you got your bucket list, your grocery list, your list of things to do. You got a list of all your wishes. That's a wish list, dude. You got your Amazon and Santa Claus and Tooth Fairy too. But I know a list that don't exist, and buddy, so do you. It's the Epstein List. It's a mystery list with a twist. It's a myth of a list that we all just missed. Be an optimist, not a pessimist. If you wish to persist, it's probably best you forget that list. Now, what were we talking about? I don't remember, but I can sleep a lot better at night. Yeah, life can just go along, knowing there's 10,000 hours of sunshine and flowers and nobody doing a damn thing wrong. Hear no, see no, damn Bongino, Cash Patel. Well, I wouldn't wanna be a sweating man with bulging eyes. Now tell me them fellas ain't compromised. Any implicated dude will tell you. Anybody on the big list knows just how far the folks in charge will go to keep the status quo. So when the war bell rings, the song that they'll sing is a song that we well know. I-oh, so it's off to war I go. Well, they said they's gonna fix it, but now they're all complicit. They owe. So it's off to war we go. Send the poor off to war, what else are we for? They owe.